Okay, fine. So we will start then. Yeah, so in the previous session, so we were discussing about resource sharing, correct? So in that first we discussed about how the resources are allocated, okay, using the two approaches. So one was pool-based allocation, and one more was that is static allocation and dynamic allocation. So it is pool-based, and then the other was partition of resources. So these two. So in this partitioning of resources, this is static allocation, and allocation from pool. So it is considered to be dynamic allocation. And then we discussed about this resource table. So how the OS maintains a resource table in which the status of the resources are available. Okay, whether they are currently allocated or free. And then the sharing of resources. We talked about sequential sharing and concurrent sharing. And then we talked about CPU sharing. Okay, so CPU sharing is nothing but the concept of scheduling, as I told. So this is the diagram we discussed in the previous session. So now we shall talk about memory sharing. So we talked about CPU sharing. Now we shall talk about memory sharing. How will you share memory? So parts of memory can be treated as independent resources. Okay, so the entire memory is considered as a resource, but within the memory, again, parts of memories can be treated as independent resource. So I'll give an example. So let's say if you consider this to be, if you consider the memory like this is the whole memory. Let's say this whole memory is of 1 GB. Okay, this is a resource. So this whole 1 GB of memory, so can be again subdivided into, let's say, 4 parts. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 parts, and each part. So let's say this is part 1. So this can be treated as a separate resource. So part 2 is treated as a separate resource, and part 3 as well as part 4. These are treated as separate resource. So this is what he says here. So parts of the memory can be treated as independent resource. So here there is single memory and it is classified into 4 parts, and each part is treated as separate resources. Okay. So both partitioning and pool-based allocation can be used to manage memory. So again, the same concepts of partitioning and pool-based allocation, that is static and dynamic allocation, can also be used for managing memory also. Okay. So partitioning is simple to implement. So static allocation. So we saw that. So partitioning, I gave an example of plate meals. Okay. So taking a plate meals in a restaurant or a hotel. Okay. So that is what. So prior to execution, that is before execution starts itself. So some resources will be allocated to the process. Okay. So here in partitioning memory allocation, what will happen is, so prior to execution, that is before execution starts, so some amount of memory, let's say 2 MB or 3 MB of memory, will be allocated to each process. Okay, so that is what will happen here. So it is very simple because it can be done before the execution starts. It also simplifies protection of memory area allocated to different programs. See why it simplifies memory protection is because before execution starts itself, you will classify that this part of memory belongs to this particular process. So just example. So let's say if this is the memory. So out of this memory, let's say this much of memory you have allocated it to process P1. Okay. So then, so from here to here, you have allocated this to process P2. Okay, and then this much of memory you have allocated to process 3. So this allocation happens before execution. Okay, this will happen before execution starts. So this is partitioning based allocation. Okay, or static allocation. Partitioning based allocation. So what will happen? So before execution itself, so much of memory will be allocated. Let's say this is 2 MB. This is 3 MB. and this is 4 MB. So each process is allocated some memory. That's all. So now memory protection becomes easy. Why? Because you already know that from here to here, so there is this range of memory, it belongs to P1, and from here to this particular point, this belongs to P2. Okay, so it is very easy to implement memory protection because you already know the start address and the end address for each of the process, the memory allocated to each of the process. You know the start address and you know the end address. Similarly, this is the start address and this is the end address of the memory for P3. So it can easily be implemented, that is memory protection, because start address and the end address, which is nothing but the range of the memory allocated to each of the process, is already known before execution starts. So hence protection becomes easy. Okay. So however, pool-based allocation achieves better use of memory. Okay. So before going to pool-based, so we know the drawbacks of partitioning allocation. So what are the drawbacks of partitioning allocation? So one thing is there can be wastage of resources. Okay, that is the first thing we have studied. Okay, wastage of resources means, see, if you go to plate mills, so in plate mills, let's say there is a curd that you don't want. Okay, even though you don't want the curd, but still it is served because it is a plate mill. That is, before you ask, before the eating begins. Okay, so it will be already allocated to you. Okay, so hence that curd will be a loss of resource or a waste of a resource. Okay, that is what. So that is what will happen here in memory allocation also. That is partitioning based memory allocation also. Same thing will happen. Suppose for P1 you allocated 2 MB. So let's say out of 2 MB, P1 uses only 1.5 MB. Okay, it uses only 1.5 MB. The remaining 0.5 MB is unused. This is unused. Okay, this is unused. So it is a waste of 0.5 MB of memory. So next, this is first, you can say drawback. Next thing is, since it is static allocation, once the execution begins, see, there is no option of granting extra resources during execution. This is the second one. Okay, there is no option of granting extra resources during execution. That is, P2, you allocated 3 MB of memory for P2. So during execution, let's say P2, it wants 1 more MB of memory. Okay, 1 more MB of memory, and that 1 more MB is available here. Okay, because this memory is not allocated to anyone. So here, let's say 2 MB is available, which is free. So this is free. So now during execution, P2 wants extra memory. That is 1 more MB of memory. Okay, but since it is static allocation, you cannot allocate new resources during execution. See, even though some memory is free and you could have allocated it to P2 because it is demanding for 1 more MB of memory, this will not happen. This is not possible in partitioning based or static allocation. Okay, because allocation here can only be done before execution. These are the two drawbacks. Okay, yes, it is simple. Okay, yes, it is easy to manage the memory protection, but these are the two drawbacks in partitioning based. So now we'll come to pool based. Okay, so what will happen in pool based? The pool based allocation achieves better memory use. So we have seen this in pool based resource sharing. Okay, so what will happen in pool based? So I had compared it to a buffet meals. So wherein whatever the person wants, he will go and fetch for himself. So whichever dishes he wants, he will go to the table and he will serve the dishes himself. Okay, how much ever he wants, and he will come back and he will have the food. Okay, so hence there is no wastage of resources. That is what better use of resources. Okay, better use of memory in this case. Okay, pool based. So memory can be preemptive from inactive programs and used to accommodate active programs. So the special term swapping is used for memory preemption. So what is memory preemption? So before going to that, just see this diagram here. So what is happening here? Two approaches of memory allocation or memory sharing is shown here. So first is partitioning based. This is partitioning based, which is also known as static allocation, or which is also known as fixed partitioned approach. Okay, so which is also known as static allocation or partitioning based allocation. Fine. So on the second diagram B, it shows pool based allocation. So what you are seeing in partitioning based approaches, so you can see here. So what is happening here is, so A has been allocated with some amount of memory. So let's say this memory is 2 MB. Okay, and this is free. Okay, this part of memory is free. It is not allocated to anybody. So next B is allocated with again some memory. Let's say it is again 2 MB. Okay, and the next part is free. Fine. So let's say this part which is free, let's say it is 2 MB. This is free, so I'll write as F. And this part which is free again, it is 2 MB, it is again free. Okay, so now what is happening is A is being allocated with 2 MB of memory and A is completely utilizing it. Okay, so no wastage here. Okay, so I'm talking about partitioning based. Next B, it has been allocated 2 MB only, but out of 2 MB, it is not using 2 MB exactly. You can see a line here wherein out of 2 MB, let's say it is only using 1 MB and remaining 1 MB is unused. So this is wastage of resource. Getting what I'm saying? This is wastage of resource. This will happen in partitioning based. And one more thing is, suppose there is a new process C. So this is process A, this is process B. Let's say one more process is C. Okay. Before execution, let's say its demand is 4 MB. Okay, it demands for 4 MB of memory before execution starts now. Okay, but C will not be given 4 MB of space. Why? Because you can see here. So what is the free space here? 2 MB here and 2 MB here, but they are not continuous. Okay, they are not continuous. So one free slot is here and one more free slot is here, which is they are not continuous. So hence 4 MB of space will not be given to C. Then C cannot execute. Basically, this is the basic concept wherein C cannot execute because it requires 4 MB of space which is continuous. But here it is not continuous. Okay. See, there are arrangements nowadays wherein even though the memory is not continuous, still the processes can be allocated memory. But in early days, that was not the case wherein whatever the memory you allocate, it should be continuous. So C, which requires 4 MB, will not be provided 4 MB because there is no 4 MB continuous space. So this is the disadvantage with partitioning based. So now come to pool based. What is happening here? So pool based, so as the concept, it is dynamic allocation. So and the allocation will take place during execution. And whenever execution starts, so whatever A demands, that much amount of memory is allocated. Suppose A demands 2 MB, so 2 MB is given and it completely utilizes 2 MB. So now B demands only 1 MB, so 1 MB is given to B. So now we can see the remaining memory is free. So this memory free is of 5 MB. So 5 MB of memory is free, completely free, and it is continuous. So now a new process which is C, which requires 4 MB can be accommodated here. C, which requires 4 MB and it is continuous space. So this is the advantage of dynamic allocation. But for every approach, there will be a drawback here, which is nothing but dynamic allocation is more complicated and it requires more time. Okay. Same thing is explained here. Right. And coming to this statement here, so what is this? Memory can be preempted. Actually, it is typo here. Memory can be preempted from inactive programs and can be used to accommodate active programs. Okay, so what do you mean by this is, see, suppose you have allocated 2 MB of space to A and 1 MB of space to B, right? So now, once you allocated, let's say this process B, it is waiting for some input. Okay, it is waiting for some, you can say, interrupt to continue, or it is waiting for some event to continue. So what is that event? Let's say it is a key press. So process B cannot continue until the user presses some key. So let's say it is a space or a enter key. So until that key is pressed, B cannot continue. So hence, what will happen is B is said to be inactive. Okay, B is said to be inactive. Why? Because it is not doing any job, but it is simply waiting for an event, which is the key press. So in such case, this B will be taken out of memory, and some other process, let's say D, which requires again 1 MB only, it will be swapped to this position. So B is swapped out and D is swapped in. Okay, B is swapped out and D is swapped in. So where D can continue its operation. Okay, it is not waiting for any event. It can continue its operation. Meanwhile, B is still waiting for the key press. Once the key is pressed, then B will be brought back and D will be taken out. Okay, B will be swapped in and D will be swapped out in that case. Okay, so this is known as swapping. Okay, so this is known as memory preemption. So inactive programs will be removed out of the memory and active programs will be placed into the memory. So which is known as swap out and swap in. Okay. Yeah, so same concept is applied in disk sharing. Okay, so disk means it is the secondary storage. Okay, secondary storage, which is the hard disk in your PCs and laptops. Okay, so different parts of disk can be treated as different or independent resources. So again, same thing as primary memory. So both partitioning and pool-based approaches are feasible here also. However, modern OS show a preference for pool-based approach. So partitioning is not done, pool-based approach. So what do you mean by pool-based approaches? The example. So I'll show the example here. So if I go to my PC here, so this PC is or my computer. So you can see this is a pool-based approach. So in D drive, so out of D drive, which is you can see 699 GBs. Okay. So some amount of memory is already used and 293 GB is free. Okay. So here it is pool-based allocation. Why? Because see, suppose you store some file here. Okay. So how much ever that file is required memory, that is only utilized. Not all the 699 GB. No. Okay. Suppose I store some 1 GB file here into D drive. So this will be let's say updated to 292 GBs. Okay. So instead of 293 GB free, it will be 292 GB free. So how much ever space that file requires, only that much ever memory is allocated. Okay. So if the file requires 50 MB, it will be allocated 50 MB only. It requires 100 MB, 100 MB is allocated. Okay. So this is what example of pool-based approach, and all the modern OSs use pool-based approach only for disk sharing. Okay. Next, come to virtual resources. So what do you mean by virtual resources? A virtual resource is a fictitious resource. Fictitious. Okay. So what do you mean by fiction? Okay. What do you mean by fiction? So it is not true. Okay. So you might have seen the movies like the Avengers. Okay, and then the Harry Potter series. Right. And there are various other movies which are fiction based. Okay, so they are fiction based means they are not true. So it is an imaginary concept, imaginary story that will be portrayed in the movie. So that is what you mean by fiction or fictitious. Okay, so it's nothing but it is an illusion supported by the operating system through the use of real resource. There will be a real resource. So making use of that real resource. So some fiction is created, that is an illusion is created, saying that more resources are available. Okay, so more resources are available. That is the illusion, but actually there are not many resources. Only one resource will be available. Instead of showing one resource, the OS will create an illusion saying that there are, let's say, 5 resources of the same type, but actually there will be only one real resource. Instead of showing one real resource, it will show 5 illusion resources or fictitious resources. Okay, then OS may use same real resource to support several virtual resources. That is what. Okay, so example here is taken of a printer. Okay, so example here it is taken of a printer. What is the example? Yeah, if you go to or if you visit a cyber cafe. Okay, so nowadays no one visits cyber cafes because internet is available with everyone, right? So in case some need you visit a cyber cafe, what will happen there is, let's say there are four systems. Okay, this is PC1, this is PC2, this is PC3, and this is PC4. So there are four systems, and there will be partitions like this. Okay, so this is system 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so let's say all the four partitions or the systems are occupied by the users. Okay, and they are browsing internet, and from the internet they want to take some printout. Okay, from the internet they want to take some printout. So what they'll do is, so from system 1, so the user 1, so user 1, this is user 2, this is user 3, and user 4. So user 1 wants to take a printout, user 2 also wants to take a printout, user 3 also wants to take a printout, and user 4 also wants to take a printout. Let's say they simultaneously give the command for printing the document. Okay, so they just give Control P and they press enter. Right? But the problem is there is only one printer, P1. But there are four systems. So only one printer, P1. So what will happen now? And the commands are given simultaneously. So how this task will be completed? So whether the task will not be completed or whether it will be completed. See, obviously the task will be completed. Why? Because the operating system that are there in these pieces, it will create an illusion. Okay, it will create an illusion, or known as it will create a virtual resource, saying that. So what is the virtual resource here? Saying that, or the illusion is that each user is having their own printers. That is the illusion created. The virtual resource or the operating system, it will create virtual resource saying that there are four printers. Let's say I'll take the main printer as capital P. So the OS will create an illusion saying that there are four printers, P1, P2, P3, and P4. So for each user, there is a printer. That is the illusion created by the operating system. So that is how all the four users can give the print command simultaneously. Because there is an illusion saying that each PC is allocated with a print, but actually there is only one printer. Okay, so this is the real printer, real resource. So using this real resource, the operating system is creating an illusion of four extra printers. So what will happen here is actually, so all these systems, okay, so all these systems, all the four systems will be connected to this printer through a buffer. Okay, so there will be a buffer P. Okay, and after the buffer, it is connected to the printer. This buffer, what it will do is, it is just like a first in, first out memory. Okay, so a buffer is usually a first in, first out memory. So what this buffer will have is, if you want to see inside the buffer, what it will have is, it is a first in, first out buffer or memory. So it will have slots like this. So it is a memory. Okay, it will have slots like this. So now what will happen is, so all the four have given the print command, but actually, so there is no way that all the four commands will be given simultaneously. So there will be slightest of delay. So let's say it will be in terms of microseconds. Okay, so it is not ideal that all the four persons will press the Control P and press the enter simultaneously. There will be, let's say, microseconds of delay. So then what will happen is, let's say command from PC1 comes first. Okay, so then that will be stored here. So this is the command from PC1 to print some document. Next comes, let's say, from 4. Okay, so next command comes from 3, and next command comes from 2. So these are the commands to print a document. So these will be stored in this buffer. Okay, in first come first serve basis. FIF, whichever comes first, that will be placed at the top. So then after this, so this will be connected to the printer. Okay, printer P. So now printer P, what it will do? It will take the first or the top of the buffer. whichever command is there in the top of the buffer, it will consider that. In this case, 1. So the command for print from the PC1 is available first. So P will consider this and it will print out the document of PC1. The PC1 document will print. Then it will take the next in the line, so which is PC4 document. Okay, so hope you are getting. The next is PC3 document is printed, and then next PC2 document is printed. So this is what. Okay. So this is the concept of virtual resources. So same thing is explained here. Okay. So just go through it. Okay. So nowadays you might hear about virtual memory. Okay. So virtual RAM. So some Vivo devices these days they support virtual RAM. So recently they released the Vivo released a new series of phones, iQOO 7. If someone regularly browses the let's say Amazon or Flipkart like that, so online shopping sites, so you might have seen this iQOO 7. Okay, so this is a new phone that is launched by Vivo, so which they claim that so it is actually having 8 GB of RAM. Okay, 8 GB of RAM. So they say it can virtually boost up to 11 GB of RAM. Okay, it can virtually boost up to 11 GB of RAM. That is what is the concept of virtual memory. Okay, so actually the real memory is 8 GB, but you can still boost this 8 GB to 11 GB using the virtual memory concept. Okay, so whatever we talked about. Yeah, so next the third aspect of operating system. Okay, so first thing we studied, so I'll go back. Okay, so because some people might have forgotten this already, so what we are actually discussing. Okay, so we were discussing about 3 aspects of operating system. Okay, so the first aspect was program management. We discussed this. Okay, so how the programs are managed, how the allocation and deallocation of memory is done. Okay, everything. Next, how the resources are set. Then resource management. Second, resource management. So how the OS allocates, deallocates, pool based, partition based. Okay, CPU sharing, memory sharing, virtual memory. Okay, everything we discuss. Next, the last aspect of OS. Okay, so the last principal function of OS is security and protection. Okay, so this we'll talk about now. Security and protection. See, these each can be asked for 5 marks. So explain resource sharing, explain program management, or explain security and protection. They can be asked for 5 marks each. Okay, or collectively it can be asked for 6 marks or 7 marks. So explain the 3 principal functions of OS. So they can be collectively asked for 6 or 8 marks. So depending on the marks allocated, you have to think and write how much content you want to express. It is completely based on marks. Okay. So now security and protection. So an OS must ensure that no person can illegally use programs. Okay. So obviously it is required nowadays, and the same thing is happening in the OS of embedded system, a mobile phone, a PC, a laptop, anything. Okay. So no one should illegally use. That is why we set passwords, we set patterns. Okay. We set face unlocks. Okay. We set biometrics like that. Okay. And so that is taken care by the OS, and the resources in the system, okay, or interfere with them in any matter. That is, there is no resource interruption also, or interference also should not take place. Okay, so resource interference. I have given an example. Let's say you are using a resource. If you go back to the concept of the 2 brothers using a bicycle. Okay, so let's say you allocated the bicycle to brother 1 for 12 hours. So whenever brother 1 is using the bicycle, brother 2 should not go and interfere with brother 1 in utilizing the resource of that bicycle. Okay, so that interference should not happen. Once it is allocated to someone, it is given complete control to that particular someone or some process. and no other process should interfere with the resource utilization. That should be taken care by OS. So security and protection. Okay. So the security function counters threats of illegal use or interference that are posed by persons or programs outside the control of the operating system. Okay, so security talks about, or it concentrates about illegal use or interference from someone, okay, or some person or some programs which are outside the control of OS. Okay, so they are not within the OS, but they are coming from outside the OS. So such threats or illegal use are concerned for security purpose. Okay, they come under security. Okay, whereas protection. So what do you mean protection? Protection counters similar threats posed by its users. Okay, so there are two aspects: security and protection. So security means illegal access or threats from outside the OS or outside the system. So whichever the threats or the illegal use requests that come outside the system, that comes under security. But protection means, so again it is illegal use or threats, but they come within the operating environment or within the users of the OS or the system. So the users itself pose the challenge for protection. Okay, so the security means the challenges are posed outside the system, from outside the system. Protection means the challenges are posed from within the system. Whoever is using the system, they will pose the challenges like illegal user threats, interference. Okay, you can see the diagram here. So the diagram clearly indicates whatever we discussed. So security and protection. The security issues arise, as I told, from outside the system. So there is an intruder here. Okay, so who will pose security threats from outside the system? So he is posing threats from outside the system. So these are security issues. Okay, so he is trying to access a resource. He is trying to access a program. Okay, and he through the internet he is trying to access the system. So this will happen. Okay, hope you know this. We will use software known as TeamViewer. Okay, TeamViewer software. So wherein if you install this TeamViewer, what will happen is someone can take the control of your system through the internet. Okay, and that someone will not be available here. He can be available anywhere in the world. Okay, so from anywhere in the world, he will take the control of your system. You can give the control using this software, TeamViewer. Okay, so like this, there are other softwares also. Okay, which will be installed by mistake by the user of the computer system. Okay, see that particular program will pose like it is a let's say an antivirus. Okay, so hence the user will download that antivirus. So it is posing as an antivirus. He will download it and he will install it. So that user thinks that that program is acting as an antivirus, but actually it is a software like TeamViewer, wherein so the entire control of your PC is given to someone else who is sitting somewhere in the world who is connected to internet. Those cases are also available. Okay, those cases are also happening. So security threats are nothing but they come from outside the system. So some intruder is trying to access the resource within the system, or is trying to access a program within the system, or is trying to access the entire system itself using the internet. Okay, so this is security issues. What are protection issues? So you can see here within the system, there are users who are trying to access the resources which should not be supposed to access by this user. Okay, who are not these resources are not supposed to be accessed by this user, but even then he is trying to access this resource. So this is protection issue. You can say protection issue. So within the system itself, a user tries to access a resource which is not supposed to be accessed by him. So it is a protection issue. But security issue means so a user who is outside the system, he is not the user of this computer at all, but he is still trying to utilize or access the resource. That is security issue. So hope you got the concept. It is very clear in this diagram. Okay. So same thing is explained here. Okay. So just go through whatever I discussed here. Same thing is explained. Okay. So main thing is you have to understand this diagram. Then you can easily write the concept. This is about the third, you can say, principal function of OS, okay, which is security and protection. So next, we'll talk about efficiency, system performance, and user convenience. So how these are measured and what is actually you mean by efficiency? What do you mean by system performance and what do you mean by user convenience? Okay, so the computing environment consists of computer system, its interfaces with other systems, and the services provided by the operating system to its user and their programs. So obviously, okay, computing environments evolve continuously to provide better quality of services to users. Yes, this is obvious. The computing environment evolve continuously because evolution is everything these days. You know that. Okay, I'll just give an example. See, whenever the mobile phones, the smartphones, they were initially launched. Okay, once they were launched, there was no concept of updating the operating system of the mobile phones. No concept was there. Okay, if you want to update or if there is any corruption in your operating system of a mobile phone, then you have to take your mobile phone to a service center. There, by manually connecting or physically connecting your mobile phone using a cable to the internet, then only they could do some upgrading of the operating system. Okay? So this was initial days. But as the days evolved, so the mobile phones, the smartphones evolved, okay, with the facility of what they call nowadays as OTA, on the air updates. Okay, so you do this every day now, right? On the air updates. Okay, so what do you mean by that is, see, if the manufacturer of the mobile phone, they continuously want to update their operating system so that they can remove some bugs. Okay? They can remove some errors that are there in their operating system. Okay, so how they do it? They push these on the air updates so that if the phone has internet that is sufficient to wherever the phone might be, if it is connected to internet, so then it can update the operating system itself. So no need to take the mobile phone to a service center. Okay, so this is the evolution feature that has been included in smartphones. This is evolution is everything nowadays. Okay, so obviously computing environment evolve. Yes. However, the operating system has to perform more complex tasks as computer systems become more powerful. Yes, this is very true. Yes. The example is the Windows XP or let's say Windows 98 Windows 98 operating system. It provided very few features, okay, and even the plug and play the plug and play feature was also not available in Windows 98. Okay, so suppose you want to connect a printer or let's say a pen drive to the PC which is running Windows 98 operating system, then what you have to do is once you connect it, you have to restart the system. Okay, then only once the system is restarted, it will recognize your device, whatever the printer you have connected, whatever the pen drive you have. Okay, so but as the computers evolved, okay, so the operating system would do more jobs. Okay, would have to do more jobs. So nowadays you can see the example of mobile phones itself. The initial days, so the operating system of the mobile phone, if it took care of some applications like a music player, okay, so like a video player, it was sufficient. The Android system would take care of playing some music, playing some video. It was sufficient. But now it is not the case. Nowadays, the operating system has to take care of let's say sharing the location, has to take care of the downloading the content from the internet. Okay, it has to take care of streaming the content live. Okay, it has to take care of streaming the content live from the camera. It has inbuilt. Okay, so like that, various other jobs are added now. Okay, because the systems have evolved, the hardware has evolved. The operating system has more job to do nowadays. Okay, that is what. So their interface with IO devices and other computer systems become more complex, and its user demands new services. Yes, so the users are demanding new services. Yes, so as I told. So previously, if you could take a picture, so that was a big deal. That was very sufficient for a user. But nowadays, it is not sufficient. So the user wants to take a picture with many effects. Okay, the user wants to edit the picture with after taking the photos. Okay, so the user wants to adjust the contrast. He has to adjust the. He wants to adjust the brightness. Okay, he wants to add some effects. Everything is required. So hence the user demands have gone up. So as the technology evolves, the user demands also go up. So in this efficiency, system performance, and user convenience, first thing we'll discuss is non-interactive computing environment. Okay? So these are earliest forms of computing environment. So as this, he says it is earliest forms. That means let's say 20 years or 15 years ago. So those type of systems were non-interactive computing systems or environment. So the name itself indicates non-interactive. So they are not interactive with the user. Okay, so they just do their job and they complete their job. That's all. They will not interact with the user, or they will not interact with the user commands. Okay, in these environments, so what will happen is a user submits both computation in the form of program and its data, okay, to the operating system. So what will happen in non-interactive computing environment? So you write a program and you also supply the data for your program. Okay, and you submit that to the operating system. The computation is performed by the OS and its results are presented back to the user. So the OS, what it will do, it will execute the program, and whatever the result of that program is submitted to the or presented to the user. Okay, so the user has no contact with the computation during its execution. Okay. Right? So once the user submits the program and the required data, the user will sit idle. So he doesn't have any other job. He will just wait for the output, and once the output is presented, he will take the output. That's all. So that is why it is known as non-interactive computing environment. So hence these computations can be viewed as passive entities. So they are not active entities because there is no active involvement of the user with the OS or the system. It is passive. Submit the data, submit the program, sit back and relax. Okay. So to be interpreted and realized by the operating system. So examples of non-interactive computations are scientific computations involving number crunching and database updates performed overnight. Okay, so usually scientific computations will not have any interaction. So because they will have huge data, okay, to process. So once the program starts to execute, they will just process the data. That's all. Okay, and this processing will take too much amount of time, and the user will not have any involvement. Okay, any interaction with the system. So we will just has to wait until the entire. He just has to wait until entire session completes. Fine. So next, computations used in non-interactive environment are in the form of a program or a job. Okay, so that is what a program is set of functions or modules that can be executed by itself. Right? A job is a sequence of programs. So we saw this, right? So a single program or a sequence of program or concurrent programs. So job is a sequence of programs that together achieve a desired goal. So a program in a job is executed only if previous programs in the job are executed successfully. So we have seen already this, okay, in type of programs, type of computing environments, whether it is single program or whether it is sequence of programs or whether it is concurrent program. Okay, same thing is talked about. So next we will talk about interactive computing environment. So non-interactive is done interactive. In this computing environment, the user may interact with the computation while it is in progress. Okay, so it is not like just give a program, give a data, sit back and relax until the process completes. No, but there is some interaction between the user and the system. That is why it is interactive. So the nature of interaction between the user and the computation demands on how the computation is coded. Example, the user may input the name of a data file to a computation during its execution, or may directly input some data to it, and computation may display result after processing the data. Okay, so it is very simple. Interactive computing environment, the example is executing a C program. Okay, executing a C program that you already done in your first year. Okay, so let's say it is multiplication of two numbers. Okay, you have written a program for that and you execute that program. So it will start to execute. Okay, and what it will do is it will ask you to enter the first number. Let's say enter A. So it will display on the screen saying that enter the input A because it is multiplication of two numbers. It will ask you to enter first number, enter input A. So let's say you will enter some number like 15 and press enter. This is the interaction going on with the system and the user. Next, it will ask you to enter one more number because it is multiplication of two numbers. So you enter one more number and press enter. So this is one more interaction going on. So once you enter both the both the data required, okay, so it will display the result of multiplication. So that is what is the example for interactive computing environment. Okay, so hope you are getting this. The operating system focuses on reducing the average amount of time required to implement an interaction between the user and its computation. Okay, so the average amount of time should be reduced. Why? Because see, let's say the user wants to input the data. Okay, it wants to input the data. Sorry, the user wants to input the data. So let's say again it is multiplication of two numbers. So it is A into B. Okay, so let's say the system will ask the user to enter the value of A. So until the user enters the value of A, okay, so the computation will not proceed. Okay, so if the user doesn't enter the data at all, so then it will take more time. But the OS, what it will do, it will focus on reducing this time between the interaction between the OS and the user. It tries to reduce the time. Okay, this is interactive process. Okay, or interactive environment. Yeah, so computation in an OS. So here some definition about a program, about a job, about a process, about sub request is given. Okay, we try to go through this. First is a program. So a program is a set of functions or modules, including some functions or modules obtained from libraries. So just remember, a program is a set of functions. That's all. Okay, and in this program, you might have used some libraries. In C program, if you remember, you include stdio.h. This is a library that you include in your program. Okay, then conio.h. Okay, then math.h. So these are the libraries that you include in your program. Okay, so that is a program. Next, what is a job? Job is a sequence of programs. Okay, it is nothing but sequence of programs. So instead of having only one program, there will be multiple programs that together achieve a common goal. So I gave an example for this, okay, in the previous class, saying that So program 1, let's say you have written the code for program 1. So here it will compute. So x is equal to a plus b. Next, program 2, you have written a code here which will compute. Let's say y is equal to x plus c. And P3, in program P3, you have written a code to compute z is equal to, okay, so d plus y. So all these three programs, they are interdependent. You can say P2 cannot proceed until P1 completes, and P3 cannot proceed until P2 completes. Why? But all these three, they are doing one job. They are working towards doing one job, which is nothing but finding out what is the value of z. To find out the value of z, they are working together one after the other, okay, so that they will complete the job. So it is known as sequence of program. Okay, same thing is explained. So next, a process. What is process? A process is an execution of a program, or nothing but a program under execution is nothing but a process. Okay, so a program means it is just a piece of code which is not yet executed, or which is not in execution. So whenever the program starts to execute, then it is known as process. Okay. So next, a sub request is a presentation of computational requirement by a user to a process. Each sub request produces a single response which consists of a set of results or actions. This is a sub request. So sub request will be raised by the user to a process. A process is nothing but a program under execution. Okay. So next concepts are measuring efficiency, system performance, and user convenience. Okay. So how will you measure efficiency of a operating system, or usually how will you measure efficiency of a system? Okay. See, the measure of efficiency and user convenience. So these are the three factors that are considered while measuring the efficiency. First is efficiency of use. So the concept here is, or what you are trying to measure is CPU efficiency. So how efficiently the CPU in your system is being utilized. And usually it is expressed in terms of percentage utilization of CPU. Okay, so let's say the percentage utilization of CPU of your system is 92%. Okay, which is good score. Okay, that means here, so out of 100%, okay, so 92% of time, the CPU of your system, of your laptop or of your PC or of your embedded system, it is kept under utilization. Okay, and only for 8% of time it is kept idle. Okay, 92% efficiency, CPU efficiency means 92% it is kept under use, and only for 8% it is kept under idle. Okay, so this 8% idle, it should be still reduced so that the efficiency can be further increased. Okay, so next is system performance. So how system performance is measured is throughput. So what is throughput? It is nothing but the amount of work done per unit of time. Okay, so this unit of time can be in terms of seconds, okay, or minutes, or in terms of hours. So for 1 minute, how much time, how much work, or how much work your PC is doing. So that is what is system performance or throughput. Okay. So next, the third one is user service. So here in user service, there are two aspects: turnaround time and response time. Okay. So turnaround time is nothing but time to complete a job or a process. That is known as turnaround time. Okay. It is also known as TAT, turnaround time. Next, response time is time to implement one interaction between a user and his or her process. Okay, that is